Be careful calling people Nazis. Be careful calling people terrorists. Now, I'd like to say that was the lesson I got from a book by Timothy Snyder called On Tyranny, but it wasn't. There are 20 lessons in this book. Most of the lessons revolve around Trump being like Hitler, and I guess by extension, his supporters being Nazis. And one of the final chapters, he talks about calling people terrorists. Now, I understand what he's saying, and yeah, I think running around calling people terrorists who aren't terrorizing people is a bad thing. I've always liked, and maybe the greatest podcaster ever says this quite a bit, is one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. The British would have called George Washington a terrorist. The English may have called Gandhi a terrorist, and some people called Martin Luther King a terrorist. And that was wrong. And we shouldn't run around calling people terrorists. This is Idiot with a Library Card. It's my podcast. That's what we call a cold opening. Like in a show, like Law and Order, they show the crime, and then they break to the dun 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 dun. Wow, wow, wow. That's the book I'm going to talk about, by Timothy Snyder. Now, I wanted to read a book on tyranny because I'm a weirdo, and, I looked on Amazon. I love doing this to Google. I didn't look on Amazon. I shouldn't say that. I did buy it from Amazon. Again, maybe, note to self, change the show to be called Idiot with an Amazon Prime account. But I probably have to get Amazon's permission for that, so I'm just going to stick with the library. It's free until they come after me. So, I wanted to read a book on tyranny. I was interested. Actually, I believe despotism is what I searched. Best book on despotism. This book came up. I thought, oh, interesting. The 20th century has some really notable and interesting examples of tyranny. Like some really interesting ones. So I thought, okay, I'm in. I didn't read any reviews, and I just bought it. It was impulse. It was cheap. It went to my Kindle, and yes, sometimes I do read off a Kindle. And I was like, cool, okay, well, and I started reading. And I thought, is this guy saying Trump's a Nazi? Because what he does in this book is he talks a lot about Donald Trump. Now, he does it in a very interesting way in that he will not say Donald Trump's name, but he talks about some of the things that Donald Trump has done. Some of the negative things, certainly, that he's done. I would say he had trouble saying the positive things. Now, I think there are only a few positive things anyway, but that's neither here nor there. This book was written in December 2016, right after he was elected. So he hadn't even been president to bring on the tyranny. It was like a prediction that he was going to bring on the tyranny. So as I was halfway through the book, and the tricky thing is he doesn't name the president by name, because I guess the president is actually Voldemort. He's not. It's a stupid tactic, and I find it a bit childish. Especially when you write a book about evil people. So he talks a lot about Hitler and the Nazis in this book. It's 90% of his examples are Hitler and the Nazis, which is a little disappointing. Now, I think the Nazis and Hitler are such an extreme case that it does work to use. It's sort of the furthest totalitarian and evil type of government you can go to. So it works for examples, but if you're going to call it lessons from 20th century, I mean, you got a lot to pull from. I always find like the Pol Pot, Khmer Rouge very interesting, and sort of their ideology of going after smart people. And you could even use that if you were going to go after Trump, as Trump has not been nice to educated people, doesn't speak very good. He don't speak good, does he? No, he's got like 7 words. It's sad. But he's really gone after intellectuals, and intellectuals in turn have gone after him, and he doesn't do that. There's none of that. There's other ways you could have skinned this cat of comparing Trump to tyrants of the 20th century. I mean, history is such a vast library to pull from that there's so many great examples of whatever you're trying to sort of talk about. And this is where history can be a little misleading, because you can take historical events and sort of twist them and have them make your point. But to talk about tyranny, there are a lot of examples all through history. If you're going to limit yourself to the 20th century, fine, there's a lot of examples there, but not all Nazis. And this is my first criticism of the book. And this is going to be briefly about this book. This book sort of spurred the show. I was probably going to do a show. I do a show basically on what I'm reading, and I was probably going to do a show on this book anyway if it was a different type of book, if that makes any sense. But I was going to do a show on this book, and the show sort of is now not strictly going to be on the book, because it's such a microcosm of the problems we're having in this country today with each other. And it's a tough problem to fix, because a lot of it is relational. I don't think that's a word. But see, all the people who are going to make fun of me, maybe they're part of the problem. And this is one of the problems with the problem itself. It's and both parties use it. It's this extreme partisanship, but it's so much more than that. I can deal with partisanship. I can deal with people disagreeing with each other. You know, when I'm recording this, I think the Senate Democrats are holding up a nominee for the VA administrator head czar guy. You can just see this is why it's called idiot with a library card, not boy genius with a library card. So that's partisanship. That's okay. You know, I think things like that, and, you know, fighting over tax bills, that's cool. The Democrats aren't Nazis. They're not communists. They do some things I really don't like, and they've lately been saying some things I really don't like. I kind of feel the same way about the Republicans, though. I don't like this trying to make the other side evil, and if you're doing that, you really need to re-examine why and exactly what you're saying. You need to be careful with your words. The title of this show is going to be Trump's Not Hitler. The reason it's the title is because Trump's not Hitler. He's not. His supporters aren't Nazis. And doing that, it's so funny in a not ha-ha way that you would actually do that, because it's kind of what the Nazis did. And I don't want to... This is getting back to the book. This is what the book does a lot. Is it tells you that, you know, oh, this is what the Nazis did, and this is what Trump did, and here are the similarities. And it's so problematic. I would say read the book. You don't need to read the book. The book's not that good. It's really short, and thank God for that, because it's not that great. It's not very interesting. And you can look on YouTube, spend an hour if you want to get Timothy Snyder's thoughts on things. You can watch one of his book tapes, or book interviews, or book speeches. I don't know what they call them. What do they call when you stump for a book and you do a talk? I'm asking no one. I should get a producer. Sammy Davis Jr. is my producer. Also my dog. He has no answer. Okay, so we don't know what those are called. Book talk. We'll call it a book talk. So a lot of what he did in this book and in his speeches is sort of say tyranny's right around the corner, and it's all because Donald Trump won the presidency. No. For the United States, I think tyranny might be coming. I think that's the scary part, is tyranny might be coming. It's not going to be an all of a sudden thing, though. I don't think we're going to wake up tomorrow and see tyranny. You know, I mean, it's something hard. I actually think the Roman Empire is a good example for us, where it was a republic and things happened that you were like, whoa, it's not supposed to happen like that. And this is funny, because the one thing he talks about towards the end of the book is he talks about the burning of the Reichstag and how Hitler sort of turned that around into power, and that we have to be careful. And he says the president, again, does not name Trump. Totally okay saying Hitler's name, but Trump's too bad or evil to name, which does that mean that Trump is worse than Hitler? I don't know. I don't think so. I just think he's Timothy Snyder is admittedly part of what is called the resistance. So, and this is supposed to be a resistance book. And he does go after Putin a lot, which I'm cool with. Putin's a bad guy, and his government's run very corruptly. And that is a tyrannical government. It's a good example of a tyrannical government. And I guess he tries to use that Trump has said nice things about him. But the problem is the Democrats worked with him too. I mean, they handed him the option of what to do in Syria. Now, I don't think we should be involved in Syria, and I'm kind of okay with the decision. But if you're going to say that Putin is evil incarnate, then we really should be doing everything in our power to stop him. And I don't think Democrats are doing that. I think they're using it as a convenient sort of thing to hit Trump over the head with. So back to the calling people terrorists is dangerous, and using that. Now, all sorts of governments have used that. The Soviet Union and the Nazis, the prime examples, but Mao's China, Iran now uses it all the time, is they use the words like extremists and terrorists. The problem is that what Timothy Snyder does in this book is he uses the word Nazi a lot. And to me, it's saying the same thing. If you're going to run around and call someone a Nazi, you are calling them a terrorist and an extremist. And there are a lot of people on the punch the Nazi side saying, "Oh, this person's a Nazi," and they're not illiberal with the use of Nazi. They're liberal with it. They call a lot of people Nazis, and that is dangerous. And this is what I wanted to get to in this show. Now, the other thing I wanted to say about Timothy Snyder is a historian of Eastern European history. He seems like his specialty is the Holocaust and sort of World War II, but more on the social side. I don't think he's not a military historian. So I think he's stuck in that he knows a lot about the Nazis, which is fine. I mean, if you were that type of historian, I wouldn't want to call someone a Nazi historian. Doesn't that make them sound like that they go to Nazi rallies and their day job's a historian? I think so. Or that they are an open Nazi and also a historian. He's a historian of Nazism. Oh, that works much better. That's maybe what I'll call him from now on. But he says he's a historian of Eastern European history. Now, I think that's a pretty broad topic. Like, what would he have to say about the Mongol invasion, or the Ottoman invasion of Hungary? I don't know. He doesn't mention it. He doesn't talk about the Ottomans. He talks solely about the Nazis. Then he goes on a long diatribe about Putin's Russia. It's fine. He brushes over the Soviet Union. This is the other thing that bothers me, is it seems like Putin sort of, and I'm not exactly sure. I never hear this much about Putin. Putin is sort of a tyrannical figure of the right. I would give that. I'm a Republican, sort of right-leaning Republican. It'd be weird to be a left-leaning Republican. Not necessarily. There are liberal Republicans. But I'm a sort of libertarian Republican. I would say that Hitler and Putin are sort of beasts of the right. Now, the left would have to take Mao and Stalin and Pol Pot. So, we both sides sort of at their extremes are bad. And I think that's acknowledged by most people who aren't at their extremes. But back to the burning of the Reichstag. And this is the bizarre part of it as a historian. I think I went on a diatribe and said this before. Sorry. The Reichstag burning, if I was going to compare it to an American event, it'd be like 9/11. Like, it was a really bad terrorist attack. Now, the Reichstag, it's a little more conspiratorial, and not like 9/11's conspiratorial, where I think 90% of the population looks at people who go, "Oh, it was an inside job," and goes, "Shut up." But that the Nazis very well may have burned the Reichstag, and it would not be a shock if they did. Although not proven, and it could have been other groups, but it doesn't matter. What the Nazis did is they used it. Now, 9/11 for me is sort of the same thing. The Patriot Act really watered down, especially our Fourth Amendment rights, and sort of set us on the path we are with all the Edward Snowden revelations and all that. Here's the thing. This book specifically talks about the Reichstag fire and how the Nazis used that for their advantage and never really gets there. Sort of what his issue is that, Trump's rhetoric on Muslims and terrorism and how he wants to use that to take our rights away. And I think there is some of that in Trump, and I don't like that. But history didn't start yesterday. American history didn't start when Trump won. So this is the other weird thing about the book. I think part of it is that his thing is that tyranny happens quick, which it does, sort of. It also can happen slow, and the Roman Empire is a great example of that, in which if you take a pivotal moment that happens, you can say, oh, well, that's when it happened. And in that case, yes, it does happen quick. One day you're, a republic, the next day you're an empire, but generally speaking, it is sort of a trends and forces things. I mean, to not talk about the Bush administration, the Obama administration, their encroachment on civil liberties is bizarre. It's a bizarre thing to do. And to make it sound like, well, we're fine, but Trump's in. Now we're in real danger. And no. Totalitarianism doesn't work like that. Plus, I don't think Trump is quite up to the task of being a totalitarian leader. I just don't think he has it in him. I think our biggest problem is our not togetherness. I not even our not togetherness, because I think we'll never agree on certain things and maybe even passionately disagree. It's the name calling and the hatred we have for each other. And I don't want to make this a kumbaya campfire podcast, but I mean, this book had an opportunity to make a point, to maybe that, yeah, Trump said some not such nice things about immigrants and Muslims, and he made fun of a disabled reporter. Terrible. Those are terrible things. Hillary Clinton got up on stage and called at least, I mean, if you were going to go by the votes, 25% of Americans deplorable. Like the worst of the worst. People are rallying at college campuses calling the other people Nazis. Both sides are constantly calling for other speakers to be deplatformed and to have their shows taken away. This is the problem. We don't necessarily need to listen to each other. I'm not even saying, oh, have a conversation. Now, I will say this. If you don't know someone close to you that supported the other candidate, is of the other party, is of a different political distinction, I'm not saying go out and make a friend or force yourself to. Maybe be open to it, though. And even understand that, one, maybe you do know someone. Maybe that nice person at work that you guys don't really talk about politics. You talk about, the basketball game or whatever. Maybe they are a different party of you than you. But you like them. They're a nice person. I think we need to sort of understand that Democrats don't want to burn the Constitution. Now, I would say there's some Democrats that do. Republicans don't want to kick all immigrants out of the country and set up concentration camps for black people. Maybe there are some Republicans that do. There are bad people on both sides. Eesh. Yeah, maybe not the best wording. And it's things like that where you go, oh, well, actually, had he said there were bad people on both sides, you could probably go, yeah, there kind of were. Say there were good people on both sides was the mistake, and I think we all know what I'm referring to. This is the problem. And again, I would not recommend this book. If you want to get Timothy Snyder's, sort of insight on things, watch a YouTube channel. I can summarize the book real quick. Trump's a Nazi, or actually he's not a direct Nazi. He's very much like Hitler, and his supporters are very much like the Nazis, and they're going to take away your civil rights and round up the non-Republicans. That hasn't happened. He also said that they have all the money, too. And this is the funny part. This is my major problem with the book. This is why the show isn't quite about what the book says, is he talks about Trump supporters the same way the Nazis talked about the Jews. And this is the problem. Like, we can't see this. What worries me, the dangers of tyranny, and this is what this book was ultimately about, was the dangers of tyranny coming here. You know, he talks about people who say it can't happen here. It can. I completely agree with that. And I think he's got some of his lessons are good. Don't cede freedom without fighting first. Don't just cede things. Don't surrender your rights without examining why you need to surrender them, or if you need to surrender them at all. People who would trade freedom for safety will get and deserve neither. Oh my God, that was butchered. But if you're gonna give your rights away for safety, you're not gonna get it either, and you're not gonna deserve either. You're not gonna deserve them. I guess I want to finish with my 3 lessons. We're going to go 3 lessons. Number 1, don't hate your fellow citizens until they're worth hating. And really, you should reserve that for a very few number of people. People who wear black masks, people who fly swastika flags. I'm okay with hating them. But only a little bit. Don't hope that bad things befall them. Because maybe in 10 years they'll look back and regret it and be better people for it. We'll know what it's like to be swept up in political euphoria or political brainwashing. We need to be better to each other. That's lesson number 1, is we just need to respect each other. We don't have to like each other or agree. We certainly don't have to agree with each other about almost anything. But at least acknowledge that the other person has a brain and a soul that you can see. Lesson 2, get involved with your town. I think this is another problem, is we get so focused on what's going on in Washington, and I heard someone on the radio, I think it was a Republican from Arizona, say they were talking about a special election, that this was the most important election ever. And it wasn't. It's not. Politicians do this way too much. Ultimately, the day Trump won, the day Barack Obama won, it may have changed your life a little bit. Maybe his policies affected your life negatively or positively, either one of them. But ultimately, you make your life. And I always find that being more involved locally is so important, and that protects us a little bit from the tyranny of a federal government. When you invest your power and voice locally, I'm not saying don't go to marches marching something bad nationally or completely ignore nationally. I think we just need to sometimes take a break from the craziness that is our national politics and maybe get more involved in the craziness that is our local politics. This is also crazy, can be a little entertaining too. Thirdly, do good for your fellow man. Do something nice. If you are bored one day, find a charity to donate to. Find a charity to donate your time to. Donate your time. Help your community. You can help anyone that way. Who cares? Find a way you can help the community and make it better. And then we won't need so much saving. If we try to save each other, we won't need so much saving from a government or a strong man. We won't need a political daddy. It will be us, as a community, as a people, helping each other. So I know this is sort of the end of a Jerry Springer show. Like, be good to each other. Be good to yourself and each other. Is that what he said? He still says it. His show's still on. Amazing. But ultimately, so I'm just going to wrap up with the book. It was 20 lessons. It was on tyranny, 20 lessons from the 20th century. Not a good read. A lame read. Short and stupid. and won't say Trump's name like he's Voldemort. Watch a speech if you really want to get a taste for it on YouTube. By the way, isn't that great? I got halfway through the book. I'm like, what's this guy's deal? And I got to look him up, and there were like 7-hour-long book speeches. I watched 2 of them, got to know more about him and sort of the book, and it just helps. It's just amazing, the time we live in. And isn't that? Let's appreciate the time we live in now. So, yeah, I should have wrapped this. This is like the third Lord of the Rings movie where you feel like it could have ended 3 times already. But remember, this is idiot with a library card says, be nice to each other, respect each other, do something good today and every day.